It's Rebecca Happy here today, and we're going to be speaking with the Honourable Paul Hellyer, who's one of Canada's best known and most controversial politicians, who's just going on a book tour coming through Ottawa. And his primary concern to speak about today is about the CETA ratification. And here's a little bit of history. He was first elected in 1949 and was the youngest cabinet minister appointed to Louis St. Laurent's government 8 years later. And he subsequently held senior posts in the government of Lester B. Pearson and Pierre Elliott Trudeau, who defeated him for the Liberal Party leadership in 1968. Now, Paul has gone on to be actively involved in many political endeavors as well as business, and is an author of 15 books. So the newest one that's just come out is called Money Mafia. And so that's what he's on a book tour about, and he's here to speak to us today. So welcome, Paul. Thank you for joining us.
Good to be on your show.
Well, I'm happy to have you. And this is a little bit beyond my realm. And so you were saying to me earlier that essentially this is sort of the battle of your life in your lifetime of sort of monetary reform, but specifically right now about the CETA ratification. So could you explain a little bit about what that battle is all about?
Well, I'll try. It's a little difficult because the subject is not well understood. But money is more important than most people realize because they spend very little trouble and time trying to find out about it, where it comes from, what it is. And most people don't know that money today is nothing but a computer entry. That's all it is. And here you have billions of people around the world unemployed simply for the lack of a few well-placed computer entries. It just doesn't make any sense at all. So the thing that I'm most interested in now is that even though we haven't been using our powers, we the people own the patent to create money. It's our patent. The banks have no rights at all. They are merely licensees, and we allow them to create money. But over the years, we have gone from a system where money creation was shared between government and the private banks. We have allowed the private banks to gobble up the whole business, and they now have a monopoly. And this doesn't work in our interest, and they want to entrench it. And that's what the CETA is all about, the agreement between Canada and the European Union. It has a number of changes, but the most important one, and the one I'm fighting, and what I call the battle of my life, is really to try and keep the Canadian Parliament from ratifying the CETA agreement if it contains financial provisions, which it does, because that would tie our hands behind us for all time, and we would lose the power that is ours to end this great recession and to make the economy whole and to provide jobs and opportunities for a million young Canadians who are looking for work and looking for career opportunities. So it's a battle of my life, and it just happens that I had come out with this book, The Money Mafia, that explains how the people who manufacture money are running the world, running the United States, running us, and why they shouldn't, and what we, the people, have to do to regain some of our own power and use it for our own benefit, instead of just for the benefit of the richest, most ruthless, most uncaring, small minority of people in the whole world. So that's what it's all about, and I'm just, well, I'm excited about it, but it's a huge fight. Fortunately, there are a lot of other people who are opposed to CETA for various reasons, and we'll have to get together and fight it. But it would be better if we all understood that the most important aspect of the whole thing is that we're about to lose the power to create our own money, and we have to do some of that if we're ever going to solve our economic problems and have any kind of a future at all.
So could you just sort of explain a little bit for those of us who might not know exactly what CETA is? I'm a little bit familiar as being similar to a free trade agreement with the European Union, and I've heard people talk about them getting excited about having to have access to some of the products that Europe has that right now we can't have. But I haven't really heard anybody talk about a financial impact. So what exactly does CETA stand for? And then how come nobody else is talking about the financial impact that it's going to have on us if it's going to be actually that dire as you're explaining?
Well, it's a very broad agreement that does benefit or could potentially benefit a few people in other areas. But in my opinion, we would lose out as we have with NAFTA. We look back a few years. We came out of World War II with a diversified economy and a lot of manufacturing, some big companies, International Nickel and steel manufacturing companies, Stelco and Algoma Steel and others. And as a result of NAFTA, we have lost nearly all of the major companies that we had in this country, and with them the top jobs and the top jobs for lawyers and accountants and others. And this is a continuation of that. We're going to wind up, well, we're very fast winding up being a country where hewers of water and hewers of wood and carriers of water, or only in our case it's oil that we carry so far, although other countries are planning on using these agreements to lust after our water as well. But the important thing, I have spent 65 years studying monetary policy and banking and the international banking cartel. And the most important thing, I should say, it just overshadows all of the other considerations, good and bad. And there are, of course, good and bad. But overshadowing all of those things is the fact that we would lose our most valuable asset, and that is the ability to create our own money. We would be giving up our power that we have, Parliament has, under the Canadian Constitution to create money. I'd just like to maybe give a little history from my own experience and why I feel so strongly about it. I'm a child of the Depression, and I remember very well 1938, no jobs, none, not a job. 1939, the war comes along, and pretty soon everyone is working, either in the members of the armed forces or building factories or building munitions and that sort of thing. And we reduced unemployment to an historic low of 1%. Can you imagine? If we got down to 4 today, we'd feel that we were doing pretty well. We got down to 1%, and that is not the aim today. The aim is to have a robust economy, as we did for a long time in the previous century. So you may ask, where did the government get to pay the people in the armed forces and to pay for the munitions and all that sort of thing? And the answer is the Bank of Canada printed it, P-R-I-N-T-E-D, printed it. And the Government of Canada handed them some bonds, and they gave the Government of Canada cash, which they spent into circulation. It became what the economists at the time called high-powered money, and this allowed the banks to expand their right to create credit, virtual money, and to help finance new factories and so on. But the Government of Canada, because it owned the Bank of Canada, the money that the Government of Canada paid, or at least the benefits, the interest that the Government of Canada paid on its bonds, was given back to the government in dividends, so that the net cost of the money was zero. And in effect, we had a system where the money creation function was shared between the Government of Canada and the private banks. Well, this is the system that we had that got us out of the Great Depression, that helped finance the war, and then continued after helped finance the St. Lawrence Seaway and the Trans-Canada Highway and the great new airport terminals. And not only that, but helped us to lay the foundation for one of the best one of the best social security systems in the world. And this continued until 1974, when the Bank of Canada arbitrarily and with no discussion with the government that I know of, changed the system and started taking its orders from the Bank for International Settlements in Zurich, Switzerland, and stopped working for its shareholders, us the people. And after that, one of the things that the BIS, with its, I should mention, its questionable Nazi background, said that it was no longer desirable, they just wouldn't allow the Bank of Canada to make low-cost money available to governments, including ours, once we bought into that. And that change has cost the Canadian people $1,100 billion in interest that we have had to pay in taxes for money that could have been made available to us at zero cost from the Bank of Canada if they had stuck to their previous system, the one that was working for us. Now, what worries me is the fact that if we sign CETA, if we ratify CETA, we will lose the power to go back and adopt a system similar to that, which some of us have been recommending to the government. And we will no longer have the power for some future government, or even the present one, if it changes its mind, to start financing the billions of dollars in infrastructure that need to be done, doing more of the research that we should be doing in this country, making money available to the provinces so that they can balance their budgets and so on. The actual suggestion in both my book and that we've been making to the government is that they create $150 billion a year and split it 50-50 with the provinces, and that would be enough, say for Ontario, $38 billion would be their share, and they would have this much money for 7 years in a row, and after that still a fair amount, which would be enough to balance budgets right across the country, federal, provincial, municipal, and let us do the things that have to be done for public transportation and so on. Now, if we sign this agreement, if we ratify this agreement, we won't have the possibility of doing what has to be done, because there is no solution to the situation in which we find ourselves. None. Or in the United States, or in England, or in Europe, without the injection of a fair amount, a modest amount of government-created, zero-cost, debt-free money. It has to be done. And the issue here is that if we ratify that agreement, we will lose that right, which we have at the present time, and we will lose it forever, because if we were then to attempt to do that sort of thing, European banks could sue our government of Canada for hundreds of billions of dollars because we were changing the system and making it less valuable for them. So it's a very big issue.
It sounds very overwhelming, and I know that you've been a politician and you've been involved in politics, and you're still the longest standing member of Privy Council, and so I've assumed that you would have access to people on the Hill, and I'm just sort of curious as to why the MPs aren't aware of this, or if they are, why aren't they doing something about it? Do you think that they're unaware of these concerns that you're raising, or they're just kind of hoping that we're not paying attention?
I think the problem is I don't know of any single member of Parliament or of the government that understands the system. A few years ago, there were 5, but none of them in the cabinet, unfortunately. And now I don't know of one, although there might be 1 or 2. And I guess what worries me is that they don't seem to be interested enough in the people and in the future of the country to take off the few hours or few days necessary to learn about it. And that is the challenge that we have. And I would hope, and during the course of this campaign, because I'll be visiting other places around the province, and then hopefully maybe later across the country, that we can get the young people to realize that, for example, that they're being charged much more for tuition than would be necessary under the new system, and that their future hopes and aspirations absolutely depend on us keeping this power and using it. So maybe we can get, if we could get thousands of them and thousands of union members and thousands of other people who are concerned to start writing their MPs and the government and insisting that they learn about the problem and then act accordingly, and of course hopefully defeat, or well, actually not bring it to a vote, because that's what should really happen. Then this will be the biggest victory of the Canada since World War II. And so I have invited the MPs to come and listen to me explain in greater detail than I have time to do at the moment what is at stake and what they have to understand and what they have to do. And we're having our first meeting in Ottawa next Wednesday, November 26th, and it's being held at St. Peter's and St. Paul's Anglican Church, which is 152 Metcalfe Street, from 7 to 9 p.m. And I'll probably be speaking at around 7:30, and then taking some questions after that. And hopefully some of the members of Parliament will come, but also other people who are sufficiently interested that they will then intervene with their members of Parliament and say, if you ratify this agreement, CETA, and expect to get elected in the next election, just forget about it, because we're going to vote against you and we're going to work against you, and you'll be toast, which is what you deserve to be if you don't take the trouble to find out what's at stake and why you're giving away, not, no compensation for it. You're giving away the most valuable asset that any country has, which is the right to create its own currency, and which in the case of Canada is literally worth trillions of dollars to us. It would be the biggest defeat that this country has seen in my lifetime. We just hope that everyone will rally around and do what has to be done and get involved, because the money mafia has the money, but we have the numbers, and we have to use them before it's too late if we want to protect our own future and that of our children and our grandchildren.